I'm okay, Hannity, but we're going to pick it up where you left off. There's a lot to cover. Thank you so much. I am Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington. The Biden administration's mix of sheer incompetence and outright arrogance is laid bare. We're going to document all of it tonight. And we begin with building back weaker. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, of all the heart-wrenching photos I've seen over the past few weeks, this one hit me right in the gut. Troops paying tribute to their brothers and sisters who died last Thursday, knowing full well that it could have been one of them. And then the somber scene at Dover during the dignified transfer, one that's been carried out thousands of times during the past 20 years of combat in Afghanistan and Iraq. Parents, wives, husbands, children even lining up to greet the caskets. For many, the grief was too much to bear. Now, each life lost of the 13 and all of the others, all of them, every single one mattered. They were all tethered together in a strong, patriotic spirit of sacrifice. Many of them came from families with long histories of military service. Today, I had the great privilege of speaking on the phone with a mom whose son died last week. Every one of these young people were exceptional human beings, she said. Every single one. Please let the people know that. But now, the sadness for many of these families is mixed with rage, and justifiably so.
A genius child, an IQ of 156. He could have done anything he wanted to do in the military, and he chose to be a Marine sniper. But I never thought in a million years that he would die for nothing, because a feckless, dementia-ridden piece of crap decided he wanted a photo op on September 11th. Every Democrat that's listening, you did this to my son to prop up a disgusting human being.
Well, there's a lot to be angry about. The deadly, idiotic handling of our Afghanistan withdrawal will be a permanent stain on America's foreign policy and our military leadership. When the predictable chaos started to unfold at the airport, the Biden team was off on summer break. We learned this weekend that the Secretary of State was in the Hamptons with the fancy people. Biden was with Jill and no cabinet officials at Camp David. The press secretary had a vacation auto reply set up on her White House email. Apparently, none of them thought something important might be happening in Afghanistan while they were out having fun. It's disgraceful. This isn't the junior varsity team. This is the team of people who couldn't make JV. And sadder for our troops and their families is that the kids cut from the JV squad are actually in charge of military planning as well. Most Americans are not familiar with General McKenzie in charge of our Central Command. He's one of the most powerful military figures in America today.
After 20 years of war, you've served there. You've now watched the last troops leave. You've lost troops in recent days. How did it feel leaving Afghanistan to the very group that you overthrew 20 years ago, the Taliban?
I was very conflicted, actually. But I would tell you, I was pretty much focused on the task at hand. I'll have days ahead to actually think about that. I'm sure I will do that in the future. But right now, I'm pretty much consumed with the operational task at hand. That's a good question, and I am going to be thinking about that in the days ahead.
It seemed kind of like he was smiling at one point. Maybe it's just me. That's what I saw. But that's it. That's all he has to say. He's had years to think about this. Imagine this guy leading your son or daughter into battle. And the generals on TV, by the way, are just as useless.
This has been a very difficult 20 years. You know, I was in the basement of the Pentagon, the other situation room, when this war started. Watching our allies and the U.S. forces fight this conflict over the last 20 years with the ups and downs has brought a whole lot of thought and emotion.
What does this mean? A whole lot of thought and emotion. What does that mean? The hard reality is we lost. The U.S. military was given a mission to accomplish. It was given a series of missions, actually. And under this military leadership of the last 20 years, it failed to carry them out. The Taliban won the war, and we're retreating in disgrace. That's what happened. even though none of our made-for-TV generals want to say so. Of course, we all love our troops. No one blames them. The best, the bravest soldiers, they can't be expected to succeed with weak and ineffective military leaders. Abraham Lincoln had to fire a whole series of generals until he found a team that would lead the Army of the Potomac to victory. We never found a general who could win in Afghanistan, and so we lost. The Taliban won, and we're going to have to live with those facts. Now, believe me, I do not regret the pullout. Others do. It's long been clear that the Pentagon is simply incapable of advancing U.S. interests in the Middle East. We gave the generals every chance. The American people have spent more than $6.5 trillion on the war on terror and has little to show for it. American soldiers, reservists, and special ops all were asked to do 3, 4, some of them 5 tours of duty. There was enormous sacrifice and suffering with huge financial cost to the American taxpayers. And in the end, the Taliban is left in charge, controlling more territory. And now, with bragging rights, see the celebratory gunfire, laughing on camera, that they drove out and defeated what used to be regarded as the most powerful military in the world. Americans deserve a full accounting of the mistakes that were made from Bush to Biden. Trump was really the only president who really wanted to end the war in a manner that wouldn't be an embarrassing disaster, but he never had a Secretary of Defense who agreed with him or even respected him. The problems were widespread, with the military often closing ranks to cover them up. Many of the moral and ethical lapses of military leadership were blatant. They felt invulnerable. A lot of CEOs do as well, we know that. And no one should be surprised. After all, there's been precious little accountability for their failures in combat operations. So why would they have to be accountable on anything else? They rely on our love and admiration of the enlisted men and women and their bravery to insulate them at the top from answering for years of mismanagement, misrepresentations, and failures. Conservatives say that we shouldn't keep increasing the budgets of departments like education or HUD without tangible results and metrics being met. So why shouldn't the Pentagon be held to that same standard? We have to demand better. Our country is in real danger. Our military isn't the Peace Corps or a refugee transportation service. We love these photos, cradling babies, handing out water bottles. It's wonderful humanitarian work, and we applaud it. But in essence, it's not the purpose of the U.S. military. We need generals who can win wars, and we should never tolerate the type of failure we've seen over the past 2 decades. Finally, we can't allow the Biden team to use the collapse of Afghanistan as yet another excuse to circumvent our immigration laws. The families of the fallen and the American taxpayers deserve to know why the lives of certain Afghans were prioritized over the lives of Americans still in the country. The Biden administration has proven itself completely untrustworthy and incompetent. And now we have no reason to believe that they're going to handle the relocation of Afghans any better. Americans are very compassionate. We're very generous. But Americans also have the right to insist that our laws be followed. We should be told where the refugees will eventually be placed, by what legal authority they're here, and how their sizable expenses will be covered. Of course, the Biden people don't want accountability for their failures. They just keep saying, now's not the time to point fingers. Well, they're wrong. This is precisely when we should be demanding answers. We've already waited too long, we've wasted too much money, we've lost too many lives. Our patience is at an end. And that's the angle. Joining me now is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who served in Afghanistan. Senator, what can you all do to demand accountability on behalf of the vast majority of Americans who are disgusted by the past few weeks?
Well, Laura, I share your sentiment that my patience is tapped here. For the last 2 weeks, my office, like so many congressional offices, was focused on trying to get American citizens out of Afghanistan. Joe Biden broke that promise. He promised the Taliban would be out by August 31st. He promised the Americans in Afghanistan he'd stay to get them out. He kept his promise to the Taliban. He broke his promise to Americans. Now that all troops are out of Afghanistan, it is the time to demand answers, to hold accountable all those officials who created the terrible conditions that we've seen in Afghanistan for the last several weeks. Some of these things are very simple questions to which there are knowable answers. What did the military recommend to Joe Biden about Bagram Air Base? Who decided to close Bagram Air Base? What were the arbitrary troop numbers that were capped at the end that led to the closing of Bagram Air Base? There's a lot of very simple but very critical questions to be asked, and the answers are knowable. They're sitting on a piece of paper somewhere in the Pentagon and the White House, and it's time for Congress to demand those answers in the weeks ahead. It's also time, as you say, to ensure that we are conducting rigorous oversight of the resettlement of refugees in this country. Look, we all want to protect and welcome those Afghans who served alongside American service members. We've heard from so many people in my office, service members and veterans, who vouch personally for their translator or their interpreter. But we evacuated more than 125,000 Afghans at last count. Many of these had very little, if any, connection to our service members over the last 20 years. Look, I'm glad they're out of the Taliban's grips, but they have to qualify under American law before we admit them into this country. They cannot be a threat to this country. And like the Trump administration kept many Syrian refugees in Jordan, leveraging our relationship there, that's probably what we're going to need to do with most of the Afghan refugees who are in places like Qatar or Turkey or Albania or other countries. I'm glad that they're out of the Taliban's grip, but it's not our responsibility to welcome every single one to the country if they did not contribute directly to our military forces there over the last 20 years.
Right. Well, we keep hearing things about Afghanis who are at risk need to be out of the country. Well, that's millions of people. That's not 120,000 people. We're talking several hundred thousand or millions of people. And again, everyone feels terrible for everyone suffering around the globe, but there are laws in place, and Congress has a responsibility to make sure the laws are either changed, that refugee caps are lifted, and pretty much anyone can come here and live here if they're Afghani and they don't want to be there. That law has to be written, passed by Congress. They have to live with it in the next campaign, and Biden has to sign it into law. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, Laura, part of our oversight will be looking backwards at the failures that created these conditions in Afghanistan, but an important part of our oversight in Congress is exactly what you suggest, ensuring that the Biden administration is following the law. Those Afghans who served alongside of American troops, who have those troops vouching for them, so many of whom we've heard from over the last 2 weeks, are welcome to our country. But again, more than 125,000 Afghans were evacuated out of Afghanistan. They're in places that may not have America's standard of living, but at least they're safe from the Taliban. That doesn't mean that we have to bring every single one to America.
Well, one of them is already, the Washington Times reporting on one Afghan who was convicted of rape and deported and then made it back to America on one of the evacuation flights. Again, I just don't trust these people to vet people properly or to handle this properly. There has to be rigorous oversight. All right, I want to get to one comment from General McKenzie that stuck out today. Watch.
I will tell you the Taliban have been very pragmatic and very businesslike as we have approached this withdrawal. They were actually very helpful and useful to us as we closed down operations. They established a firm perimeter outside of the airfield to prevent people from coming on the airfield during our departure.
Senator, we have 13 Americans dead, and we have the CENTCOM commander praising the Taliban. Your response?
Yeah, well, if the Taliban was such a good security partner that was carefully vetting everyone who got close to our troops at the airport, I don't understand how a suicide bomber got through their outer perimeter to our inner perimeter. These are the kinds of questions that Congress is going to be probing in the days ahead to figure out exactly how we got into the situation where we had to cooperate with a barbarian group of outlaws in Afghanistan simply to get American citizens out of the country. And now that we're actually acting as if that's something that we can be proud of or that we should even celebrate, that we cooperated with the Taliban. We should have never gotten in that position from the beginning, and it all goes back to Joe Biden's terrible execution of this decision to withdraw our troops from Afghanistan.
Senator Cotton, thank you. And Biden and his team's staggering ineptitude has Afghan war veterans sounding the alarm. That includes my next guest, who wrote recently in the New York Times When the president spoke on Thursday night after the attack on the Abbey Gate, he nodded at sacrifice. That's fine. But what matters is to truly understand the value of service. If you do, you don't send troops to die on a poorly planned and poorly executed mission. Failing to understand the value of service results in incompetence. Joining me now is retired Marine Elliot Ackerman. He served 5 tours in Iraq and in Afghanistan, has received both the Bronze and Silver Stars. Elliot, your reaction to just what we heard today from General McKenzie, understanding what happened last Thursday to 13 of our bravest young men and women. Your reaction?
Well, I think individuals who wear the uniform, as well as us as citizens, have the right to expect a certain amount of competence in the execution of these decisions. And what we've seen the last 2 weeks has been nothing less than incompetence. I mean, people have trotted out for a long time, is this going to be Saigon? Is it not going to be Saigon? This is way worse than Saigon. I mean, but you just look at a map. I mean, at least Vietnam had hundreds of miles of coastline. Afghanistan is a landlocked country. So why would you begin shutting down all of the airports like Bagram, Kandahar, Herat, and leave us with only a single point of egress in Kabul? So this has been mismanaged from the very beginning. And frankly, as Senator McCollum mentioned, it's fallen to veterans, journalists, activists to try to get Afghans out in an extremely ad hoc manner. And with regards to the Taliban, I mean, if they're so organized and pragmatic, we just saw the Taliban flying a Black Hawk helicopter above Kandahar with a dead body hanging from its bottom. Are those our pragmatic partners? I think this whole thing is absurd. And frankly, it's the most shameful thing I've seen in my adult life.
Were you at the airport yourself as you were helping some of these evacuations that were underway?
No, I've been doing this basically on the side, along with dozens of others of folks who have deep connections to Afghanistan. Coordinating on Signal, online with. If you look at my inbox, I have notes from hundreds of Afghans, many people I don't even know, just begging for help. This is like watching thousands of people thrown into a black hole all at once.
I had a former Marine in combat ops soldier, excuse me, I'm botching it, but a former Marine was over there, Elliot, and he was working morning, noon, and night. And he's an old friend of mine, so he's calling me going, it's so much worse what's happening on the ground. He was at the airport for only 24 hours, but he's back in another country helping. He said, it's so much worse than it's being shown on television. He's like, he didn't have words for it. He said, something bad is going to happen. And of course, 2 days later, that's what happened to our troops. Elliot, final thoughts. What next?
I think what next is that, America is less safe based off of particularly the execution of this evacuation. I think our credibility with our allies and partners outside of Afghanistan needs to be rebuilt. And I think this country needs to do some real reckoning on how we got into this position where we are negotiating from a position of weakness with the Taliban. I mean, these people are thugs and barbarians, and we need to remember who we are. I mean, we're the United States of America.
Do you agree, Elliot, that there needs to be a reckoning and reform that follows? Maybe we need more civilian leadership at the top of the Pentagon. Maybe we need a new approach, because obviously 20 years of war fighting with the greatest army and greatest troops around and all this technology, and we weren't able to win.
Well, I think ultimately we need to ask ourselves, what is winning? I mean, the United States has a very specific role in the world. And if we walk away from Afghanistan, we saw this story before, in 2011, all the troops came home from Iraq and they wound up right back there 2014 because we had a foolish policy. We need to grow up. There are people in this world who want to do us harm, and we need to accept that. And so ultimately, the NYPD doesn't talk about winning the war against crime. It takes continued vigilance. And I'm sorry, it requires the same thing internationally.
Yeah, and we need to bring the people along with us. So politically, we have to make sure the people of the country are with us in every single conflict. Elliot, your piece in the New York Times was stunning, and congrats on all your success and what you're doing in writing and everything else. Thank you for joining us. A Biden-approved drone strike killed a family of 10, including 7 kids, and we keep being told it's ISIS, but the administration won't give us any details. Why is this? Glenn Greenwald has reaction in moments, and Jonathan Turley was alarmed by an admission from the Capitol police officer who shot Ashley Babbitt. He's here to tell us what it is.
From small business to manufacturing, America's tech innovators are driving economic growth and creating jobs. Tech isn't just a sector of our economy, it's critical to our economy's entire infrastructure. But some Washington politicians support policies that will cause America's most innovative companies to fall behind. These overreaching bills will strengthen our adversaries at a time when we're engaged in high-stakes competition. Who will lead the future, America or someone else? We must protect our competitive edge.
Introducing Hearty Inspirations from Nutrisystem. Premium meals with double the protein and 25% more calories, so you feel full and satisfied as you lose weight. It's a science-backed plan featuring new skillet dinners that go from pan to plate in minutes. Delicious meals that fill you up, keep you satisfied, and help you lose weight. Call or go online to get Hearty Inspirations, plus free shipping.
Having trouble getting help for erectile dysfunction?
Get help fast with Lemonade Health. Just answer a few questions. And they can send you medication so you can get better quickly. Visit lemonadehealth.com today.
Out here, let's get right into the new day. Let's show our pride for this land we call home and prepare to make the most of this summer. Let's get ready to look our best. Then let's savor our time together with family and friends. In more than 1,900 communities, Tractor Supply has everything you need to make this summer memorable, as well as the services that make shopping for it easier. Tractor Supply, everything for life out here.
My name is Sean Hayes. I'm from Yorkville, Illinois. When you've lost everything when it comes to health, and you have no energy, having good health is everything. After about 2 weeks of taking the Balance of Nature, my son made a comment that somebody could do a kickflip on a video. I'm like, I can do a kickflip. And he's like, no, you can't, because he has never seen me be that kind of active guy. So here I am after a long work week, after doing all kinds of weekend warrior projects. I go out there, I pick up the skateboard, and I nail a kickflip for him. And even afterwards, the next couple of days, I realize I'm still not sore. I'm recovered already. So having good health, good nutrition, being able to spend quality time with your friends and your family and do all the extras that you only dreamed that you would ever be able to do again, yeah, it means everything. And Balance of Nature does that.
Start now by going to balanceofnature.com and don't forget to use discount code Fox News.
Have you noticed more bruising as you age? You're not alone. Now you can help improve the appearance of bruises with DermMend Moisturizing Bruise Formula. Help your bruised skin. Find DermMend Moisturizing Bruise Formula now in the first aid aisle.
America has faced hard choices, but we chose the right path, solving complex problems for all of us. But now, when it comes to America's energy, Washington wants to chart an extreme course, canceling pipelines, imposing new taxes, mandates, and halting natural gas and oil production. A risky path that could make energy more expensive and less reliable. Washington's plan jeopardizes our security. Our direction is clear. Solutions are made in America.
Harris Faulkner puts America's news in focus.
We begin here demanding answers.
Don't miss the Faulkner Focus, weekdays at 11 on Fox News Channel.
Do we have any more paper towels?
Yep. Check the pantry. I just ordered from Boxed.
What's Boxed?
Boxed is the only wholesale club that lets you tap into the value of buying in bulk online.
Is that right?
But unlike other wholesale clubs and online stores, Boxed has no membership fees. Delivery is super fast. And look, free samples. Now we don't have to worry about running out.
Can we order cookies next time?
Save 10% and get free shipping on your first order at Boxed.com. The better way to shop bulk.
Hi, I'm John Fiorentino, inventor of the Moon Pod, the most comfortable beanbag on the planet. The first beanbag was created in 1969, and it was just a clump of cheap foam stuffed inside of a shapeless cloth. So about 50 years later, I reinvented the beanbag. Moon Pod uses zero-gravity custom bead technology that instantly adapts to your individual body shape. With its 3 dynamic relaxation positions, Moon Pod is unlike anything you've ever felt before. So join us today and experience Moon Pod, the most comfortable place in the universe.
Significant secondary explosions from the targeted vehicle indicated the presence of a substantial amount of explosive material. We are aware of reports of civilian casualties, and we take these reports very seriously, and we are continuing to assess the situation.
We take steps from the United States to avoid civilian casualties in every scenario, and probably more than almost any country in the world. I can't speak to or confirm the numbers or cases of civilian casualties in this case.
She can't, but the New York Times is reporting that 10 civilians, including 7 children, were killed by a drone strike in Kabul. Now, the Biden Pentagon assures us that this strike and others neutralized ISIS-K terrorists, who they, of course, can't tell us anything about or identify. So what's going on here? Joining us now is independent journalist Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, no one in the media seems too concerned about what looks like to be another intelligence failure. Why is that?
It's pretty bizarre. I mean, right from the beginning, there was a huge question lurking, at least for me, which is, you know, a month ago, Joe Biden assured everybody that there was very little chance that the Taliban would overrun the Afghan National Security Forces and would take over the country. Of course, that's exactly what happened 5 weeks after he gave that assurance, which seems to suggest that if they weren't lying, they know very little about what's happening in this country we've been occupying for 20 years. And then suddenly we're told that they were able, with pinpoint precision twice in a row, to identify the location of 2 different ISIS-K planners or plotters or commanders, which seems very inconsistent with the fact that they seem to have no idea what's going on in this country. They wouldn't give us the names of who these supposedly important people were, and they just asserted that there were no civilian casualties. And unlike in the Trump years, when all these media outlets love to say, Trump says this with no evidence, Trump falsely claims, all their skepticism evaporated overnight, and they just repeated the fact that we got our target, there were no civilian casualties, and there was never any evidence for it and no questioning of it at all.
Well, the Pentagon is just, they're not going to release the names, the identities of these terrorists, and it doesn't look like we're going to learn much more about it than we already have. Watch.
There'll probably be a time when we can talk to you about the names. That's not the time right now. We are still dealing with, as we saw from last night's rocket attacks, very real, ongoing threats. And I think we're doing what we believe to be the prudent thing with respect to the release of information. We're giving you as much as we can in as close to real time as we can, but we're not going to be able to give you everything.
Glenn, this is the new trick. They say, well, now's not the time. Now's not the time to demand accountability. Now's not the time to ask questions. Now's not the time to give us any identities. But the fact is, it's never a good time.
Look, this is one of the most major national security events, obviously, in the last decade or two, if not in our lifetimes. People have different opinions about whether we should have left or shouldn't, how we should have done it. But we all have the right to know what actually is going on, what happened in Afghanistan. And remember, the media during the Trump years made a big flamboyant showing of the importance of transparency. The Washington Post actually adopted a motto specifically for the Trump era that read, "Democracy dies in darkness." And so here's John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, telling you that you have to believe them when they tell you that they killed really important people involved in these attacks, but you can't even know who these people are. Why not? Why can't we know that? We're just being asked to accept their word on blind faith. And every time this happens, Laura, where, you know, you go and you kill an entire family, just wipe them off the face of the planet, young children, it isn't that anybody questions whether or not we had the right to do a retaliatory strike after that hideous attack in Kabul. Of course we did. But every time that happens, it generates so much anti-American hatred and anti-American sentiment around the world. We need to know, at the very least, whether it was actually a legitimate strike or whether it was just something that was done for Biden to get rid of a bad news cycle and to prevent people from saying that he's weak. And the lack of interest on the part of the media is amazing in that.
Well, there's a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids who are dead, and I think we should know whether a drone strike actually killed them. It's a basic question. Glenn, thank you. And we turn now to another tragic killing, the shooting of Air Force vet Ashley Babbitt by a Capitol police officer whose identity has finally been revealed. His name is Lieutenant Michael Byrd, and of course he recently got the All-Star treatment on NBC News. But during his interview, he said something that caught our attention.
It was later I, found out that the subject did not have a weapon, but there was no way to know that at that time. And I could not fully see her hands or what was in the backpack or what the intentions of. But they had shown violence leading up to that point.
But wait a minute, the media told us Byrd's actions were exonerated by the FBI and Capitol Police. How can that be with what he just said? Raising red flags? Well, here with me now is Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law prof and Fox News contributor. Jonathan, I know you watch this very closely. Your reaction to this, his statement, and does it blow up the whole he was exonerated narrative?
Well, it was an astonishing interview. I wrote about it in The Hill because he basically went through the list of what you're not allowed to do as the basis for lethal force. He said, I didn't see a weapon. I didn't know her intent. I didn't know what was on her back. I shot her. And, obviously, all of us can sympathize in being in a closed room in the middle of a riot. Babbitt was engaged in criminal conduct. She was illegally trespassing. She was disobeying police orders. There was a great deal of damage, and she was going through a window at that time. So all of that is criminal conduct, but you can't just shoot criminal trespassers. You can't shoot people damaging government property. You have to show an imminent threat to yourself or to others. And here you have an officer who actually says, I really couldn't see her hands. I didn't know if she was armed or not. According to that interpretation, he could have shot the next 20 people through the window. We could have shot hundreds of people that day on the Hill. But only one officer did so. That was Lieutenant Byrd. All the other officers, including officers who were attacked, who were injured, refrained from using lethal force. And I say that with a great deal of respect because we demand of officers a level of restraint and courage that most of us couldn't muster. It's a really difficult job. But what he described in the interview falls way outside, of the standard for the use of lethal force.
Well, here's more from the NBC interview.
Based on your training, in that case, does it matter that the person was armed or not?
According to law, it does not. I know based on my training and my policy, what I did was appropriate.
Jonathan, all fine, according to his training.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I've heard from officers around the country who couldn't believe the interview because it is true that you can use an authorized level of lethal force with someone who's unarmed if you believed they were unarmed and it was reasonable. We've had cases where officers thought someone was armed. Maybe they threw a weapon away seconds before. We had a case like that in Chicago. But he was describing something very different. He was saying he didn't have any idea whether she was armed. He had no idea what her intent was. All he knew is she was coming through a window against police orders. And under that argument, you could have shot hundreds of people in Seattle, Portland. There were police stations who were taken over. People went through those doors. Under this standard, every one of those protesters in Portland and Seattle that went into those government buildings destroying property could have been shot. Yeah, does that track? Right.
Yeah. No, it does. It's imminent bodily harm. Right? They have imminent coming through a window. You're essentially shooting blind when you can't see if there's any weapon. Jonathan, your piece was so important. Thank you. And coming up, if you thought Biden's Afghanistan response has been a disaster, well, wait until you see how he's handling the hurricane so far. I'm talking about Ida, seen and unseen, with Raymond next.
Energy is everywhere, even in a little seedling, which, when turned into fuel, can help power a plane. At Chevron's El Segundo refinery, we're looking to turn plant-based oil into renewable gasoline, jet, and diesel fuels. Our planet offers countless sources of energy, but it's only human to find the ones that could power a better future.
Hi, I'm Mark Spitz. I never dreamed that I would be endorsing a pain relief product, but here I am, very excited to tell you about Relief Factor, the 100% drug-free supplement that is helping tens of thousands of people lower or even eliminate their pain, like this person.
Earlier in my life, I walked across the United States from Maine to the Golden Gate Bridge. Then when I turned 60, though, my knees began hurting, and then they began aching, and it felt like razor blades were in there. Then I heard about Relief Factor on the radio, and I tried it, and within 3 weeks, my knees have gotten better and better until I don't even notice them anymore. It's like a miracle to me.
Getting older, exercise, and everyday living can cause pain too, which is why Relief Factor created the 3-week quick start and then discounted it to $19.95. About $1 a day to get out of pain. And after that, less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day to stay out of pain. Live your life with Relief Factor, only at relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF.
I need new struts for my 2010 Chevy. Let me see struts by AC, Delco, KYB, and any under $50.
We might be able to get some struts from the warehouse.
Why watch the counterman tap on his computer and hope he chooses the right part? Go to rockauto.com. Auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. Choose the brands, prices, and features you want. Auto parts at the lowest price. Conveniently delivered to your home or business.
All the parts your car will ever need, Rock Auto.
In today's challenging world, being safer at home has taken on a new dimension, and our seniors need more attention than ever before. With our award-winning one-to-one personalized home care, Visiting Angels can help your family navigate through these difficult times, providing care that will give you the peace of mind that makes the future look a lot brighter. Visiting Angels, we're here for you.
Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care.
I was getting run down. I was coaching. I coach all the time. I work early in the morning. I needed energy. So I started taking Balance of Nature, and I could coach better. I could hit the ball harder at my players. I can make an overhand serve, which I have not been able to do in a long time. And my players noticed too, like, oh, you've got more energy.
Balance of Nature does give me that peace of mind. You know, instead of trying to isolate certain vitamins and minerals, you're taking the whole thing. I mean, I think it's the closest thing to actually eating real fruit and vegetables.
With Balance of Nature, immediately I noticed that my energy levels picked up. Even with not a lot of sleep, I could function and be the mom I needed to be for my son.
Start your journey with the best fruit and vegetable product on the market by going to balanceofnature.com or by calling 1-800-2468-751. And don't forget to get 35% off your first order as a preferred customer by using discount code Fox News.
At Fox Nation, we've been dedicated to sharing the stories of those who have sacrificed for our great country. And in honor of that, we're giving all active military and veterans Fox Nation for free for an entire year. Get the shows that celebrate our country and the people that serve and protect it.
We need to remember that our freedom was not won through diplomacy. It was through good men and women shedding blood for our freedom.
It's good for us to take a pause to honor their service and honor their sacrifice.
You go into tattoo shops now and you still see a lot of patriotic and military style stuff.
Even though he's a dog, he was still my ranger buddy.
She's a constant reminder that there is light at the end of that tunnel.
If you're active military or a veteran, go to foxnation.com to get this limited time offer right now. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice, and enjoy your free year of Fox Nation. America is streaming.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services. Attention firefighters. Certain chemicals in firefighting foams are linked to cancer. Exposure to foam may increase the risk of kidney, pancreatic, testicular, thyroid, bladder, breast, colon, liver, and prostate cancer, as well as leukemia and lymphoma. Firefighters who use these foams and later develop cancer may be entitled to compensation. Call Sokolov Law, 1-800-368-2627 for a free legal consultation. 1-800-368-2627. I'm an unattorney spokesperson.
It's time for our Seen and Unseen segment where we expose the big cultural stories of the day. And joining us for a Hurricane Ida edition, our own personal Ida refugee, Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo, who joins us from Florida. Ray, we're glad you're safe. But the president's been staging pressers, I've noticed, to assure everyone that he has this whole situation in hand, or his administration.
And the hard work of the FEMA team, all of whom are gathered behind me, many of whom are gathered behind me.
Well, it was 20,000 employees. Laura, what's 20,000, give or take the handful behind him? But this presser ended in classic Biden style.
I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead.
Mr. President, on Afghanistan.
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
Can you give me still an
Okay.
risk of like a report, sir?
Thank you. I know there's no group of Americans know how dangerous it is more than you guys do.
Now, first of all,
He's
he always
coming,
seems
he's going,
lost.
he can't
He's
find
lost.
the exit.
Where
exactly.
is he going?
But Laura, who is telling the president there are questions he's not supposed to answer? I want to know, I want to see that list. Why is the president of the United States being controlled this way? He should come out and tell us the facts.
No.
He said he'd shoot from the shoulder. Give us the truth. We don't know what to believe in these press conferences.
No, and today Biden was at it again, Raymond. He was making even less sense, if that's possible, during a press conference call with governors and mayors who were all affected, of course, by the hurricane.
I know you've got a lot to manage in your states, but the fact is that, we know Hurricane Ida had the potential to cause massive damage, and that's exactly what we saw. And I'm here with my senior advisor and boy who knows Louisiana very, very well, man, and New Orleans, and Cedric Richmond.
My boy who knows Louisiana. This is a former congressman, our African-American congressman from Louisiana. Why is the president calling him boy? And why is no one concerned about this, to say nothing of the syntax? This is a sad display, Laura. And at a time when people are hurting, this does not engender confidence.
My favorite, though, Raymond, is the mask hanging from his ear, because that's always a sign of someone who's fully in control. Was that a mask hanging down? It's ridiculous.
Well, he seems completely programmed, Laura, and unable to even read his own 25-point font script.
Now, Cedric, who are we going to next? And is Mayor Cantrell on? Mayor Cantrell, are you on? I don't think she was able to get connected.
I don't think so, Mr. President.
They can't even get the Zoom call right, Laura. The reason Cantrell isn't on the line is because we in New Orleans are not going to have electricity restored for at least 3 weeks. And by the way, we had failures, electric failures throughout the hurricane when the pumps didn't work. That's after you, the American taxpayer, paid $14 billion to increase and upgrade our levees and our pumping system. They still didn't really work. Laura, the most galling thing about all of this, all day I've been watching, all the networks, they're focused on Afghanis and bringing them to the United States. We can evacuate Kabul, but we can't evacuate our own people from the path of a natural disaster. They worry about Afghanis at risk. I'm worried about Americans and New Orleanians and Louisianians at risk tonight. And it seems no one is worried about them now that the storm has moved northward. They're hurting and they're dying in New Orleans.
But Raymond, don't worry, because LaToya Cantrell has it all covered. All right, Raymond, thank you for everything, and we'll pray for the people of New Orleans. A bombshell new study confirms what this show has been telling you for months. Recovering from COVID could give you far better protection than a vaccine. My medicine cabinet breaks down the incredible new research next.
Hi, I'm Mike Dunleavy, governor of the great state of Alaska, and we're inviting you to come to our great state this summer. If you want to see glaciers, bears, pan for gold, you name it, Alaska is the place. Having one of the highest vaccination rates in the country, our people are safe, and you will be too. So come join us and experience the last frontier.
What makes new Salonpas Arthritis Gel so good for arthritis pain? Salonpas contains the most prescribed topical pain relief ingredient. It's clinically proven, reduces inflammation, and comes in original prescription strength. Salonpas, it's good medicine.
Well, Guy, looks like we got us a little seating situation.